This is Golden Years, a roadmap to navigate retirement with Mark Cordner, the podcast.
Welcome to the show, folks. We appreciate you joining us here for Golden Years, a roadmap to navigate retirement. My name is Jessica, alongside Mr. Mark Cordner, each and every single week. Lots to talk about on today's show. Of course, the big question you should be asking your financial advisor before the end of the year. And of course, yes, now that we are post-election, what can we expect from the stock market in 2025? We're going to dive into that in just a few moments. As always, Mark, welcome, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Just got back from a conference in Phoenix. A reminder of why I like the Southwest during the winter months.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, you are. Oh my gosh, you're like, you know, they have the saying, the busiest man in showbiz. You are the busiest man in the financial biz. I'm telling you. I don't even know where you are on the map half the time.
Well, it's been an insanely busy year, but all good, all good. We've helped a lot of people, and that's what drives me.
You live and breathe to help educate folks and help everybody get the answers to the questions that have really been keeping them up at night for the past, some people, 10, 20 years, going, man, I don't even know if I can afford to retire. I don't know if I've done enough. And then you throw this crazy election season we just got out of, you throw that in the mix, and folks are just coming up for air after that, quite frankly. And I want to dive right into it. I mean, bottom line, if you're getting close to retirement and you have a big balance in your 401k, you might want to consider paying taxes now, a little bit out of a time, and then, you know, moving that money into a Roth. Here's CNBC's Sharon Epperson. She says a lot of folks are using this strategy.
46% increase year over year in the second quarter of 2024, according to Fidelity. Shifting money from a pre-tax IRA or 401k to a Roth IRA can lower taxable income in retirement and provide tax-free growth.
Tax-free growth. I think we're all looking for that. I mean, that sounds good to me. So have you seen an uptick in conversions this year because of all the uncertainty when it comes to, you know, the Trump tax cuts, et cetera? And I guess really, is the goal to get all the money converted? And if so, is there a certain age or time limit you're worried about?
Boy, that's a loaded question because it really depends upon each individual. There's a lot of different factors, but absolutely, yes, this is a key part of my practice. We teach these public education seminars in which the reduction of future taxes is a key pillar of the class, and Roth conversions is really the most wonderful tool we have available to us. So it is a key part of our practice, always has been, always I think will be. So the basic idea is people who have accumulated money in tax-deferred plans have to realize that deferred means postponed, which means if we're postponing the taxation of these savings, as well as the calculation of that tax, by the way, then we just have to recognize that we're going to have to deal with this at some point in the future. And how soon we deal with it really is up to us. If we believe, as most of the people I work with do, that tax rates are going to have to go up in the future just as a mathematical necessity, then the choice is to pay taxes now in historically low tax environment versus later in what will very likely be a much higher tax environment. And so we can choose to pay the tax on our own term and at our own timing. And certainly if the Trump tax cuts get extended the way they've talked about, that's going to buy a little more time to do this in a partial or piecemeal kind of fashion. So in other words, let's imagine that someone has, for example, $500,000 saved in their retirement account and it's never been taxed before. They can choose to convert that all at once and thereby have $500,000 added to all their other earnings and pay tax on that very large sum all at once, or they can choose to do it in a little more digestible fashion and break it piecemeal into parts. And so, for example, that $500,000 could be converted at a rate of roughly $100,000 per year for each of the next 5 years. We can stagger that out over time and thereby basically buy time to not only keep us in a lower tax bracket, but make that tax payment more manageable. And so that's a big part of what we do. We have to manage both the marginal tax bracket as well as what's called income-related monthly adjustment amount, which most Americans are totally oblivious to. And that's the fact that when we get to age 65 and apply for Medicare, they are going to look at our income at age 63, 2 years prior, and base our premiums off of what our income was at age 63. And they do that same thing each year going forward. So at age 66, they look at our income from age 64. But the key reason for pointing this out is that they're looking not only at your active earnings, but also at any money that you've converted. That counts as income in that given year. And so you can look like you have an artificially high income and thereby not only have to deal with the income tax issue, but also the potential to have to pay more for your Medicare Part B and Part D premiums. Most Americans are totally unaware of that. So some people will do these Roth conversions and then basically get a spanking when suddenly they see that their Medicare Part B premiums have gone up and their Social Security take-home pay has decreased. So there's a number of things to balance here. Another thing to consider is that not everyone needs to convert all of their money. Some people, for example, who do not have pensions can pull money out of their traditional tax-deferred IRAs tax-free under the standard deduction. And what I mean by that is everyone in America gets what's called the standard deduction. And that amount basically can be income from any source and not be taxed. And so people can earn money and not be taxed when they contribute it to an IRA or 401k, not be taxed on it while it grows, and now come out tax-free under the current standard deduction. And so some people only need to convert a portion of their 401k or IRA money because the other portion can be tax-free in the manner I just described. So it probably confuses people to hear that. Usually I have to put that on the whiteboard to kind of clarify for people how it works. But the simple response is that it's not a one-size-fits-all. We don't do the exact same thing for everyone. We have to look at their pension situation, if they have one or not. We have to look at, do they have real estate income, for example? We have to look at their different sources of income and then determine how much money, if any, is going to be converted. So it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. Most Americans should take advantage of it, especially if they want to give money to their children and grandchildren on a tax-free basis, most especially if they're going to have money that they don't think they'll need for their own lifestyle. If there's going to be excess money, we definitely need to have this conversation, and we need to look at a long timeline. You know, some CPAs will say you have to hit a certain crossover point before it makes sense before, to convert or not. But I would say that really needs to look at our lifetime as well as our children and grandchildren. There's other considerations. So this was a long answer to a very short question. I apologize. But again, the answer is not the same for everyone. There's a number of considerations, and that's exactly why we invite people to come visit with us. Let us take some time on the whiteboard and show you how these concepts work, and then people can make an informed decision as to if they want to make changes, if they want to pay taxes now, for example, and liberate that money so that it's not essentially held hostage, as it were, by the IRS, knowing otherwise it's going to be taxed at some future unknown rate. That's certainly not a proposition I personally like, is being subjected to whatever may come at Congress's whim and discretion. So
sure.
So we're absolutely saying pay your taxes. We're just saying pay it at the timing that is most advantageous for you. And that's exactly why we need to have a conversation about this. So again, we invite people in. It's a complimentary review. We can take them through these concepts, teach them how it works, and then they're informed. They can make a decision how they want to proceed. But if you want a tax-free future, it's possible. It just takes some advanced planning. And the sooner you get in with us, the earlier that is and easier that is to deal with.
Now that the election is over, thank God, we are seeing the stock market predictions come out for 2025. And breaking news here, they don't all agree. For instance, Morgan Stanley believes the S&P 500 will go up 11% with an outside chance of 30%. However, Goldman Sachs is encouraging folks to pull back on risk and diversify. So, Mark, how is a person that, is getting ready for retirement, how do they decide when, how, and where when it comes to all these different viewpoints?
Well, that's a great question. And the truth of it is that it requires us to be a lot more humble than we are by nature as a people. We have to acknowledge that truly God alone knows what's coming in the markets. And there is this tendency that's been perpetuated by this belief, perpetuated by Wall Street, that some people kind of have an inside view or have certain expertise that can help them beat the market and help them predict things the way we're describing here. And yet you just heard from two esteemed organizations that are in complete conflict, opposition on this idea of what to expect. The truth is none of us truly knows, and no human being can consistently beat the market because of some kind of inside skill or education. Different things will cause different ripples. There can be a hiccup in Beijing that has an effect, and it's kind of that butterfly effect. We just don't know where it's headed. And to try to pinpoint some kind of causality between a recent event like an election and what to expect immediately thereafter is really a fool's quest. And so we believe in what's called structured investing, where we essentially cover all known asset classes, and we don't try to beat the market because we know we can't. We try to harness the market's natural returns, which means in any given year, we're absolutely guaranteed to take losses, but in that same year, we're absolutely guaranteed to realize the gains that are taking place because, again, we're covering all known asset classes. There was a wonderful experiment done in Russia where they basically pitted these orangutans, monkeys as it were, against stockbrokers. And they had these monkeys throw darts at the wall to try to pick who the winning stocks would be. And would you believe it? The monkeys actually outperformed the human stockbrokers, and that study has been duplicated elsewhere. And so I think it's a wonderful story because it's true, and it illustrates the fact that there's a whole lot of luck involved in doing well on the market, unless we give up this idea of active management where we can try to predict the market, where it's going to be hot, where it's going to be cold, when it's going to be hot, when it's going to be cold, when to get in, when to get out. We tend to do that based upon historical performance, which has absolutely zero bearing on the future performance of the market. So we just have to get rid of all those ideas and embrace what many of us call structured investing, which again is where we cover all known asset classes. And with that in mind, we also have to consider safe money practices. We've talked at length in this show in the past about principal protected accounts and how those should be part of our portfolio, especially as we're approaching retirement and first entering retirement. We've got to make sure that our money, at least a portion of our money, is safe so that we can get through the near-term future safely. When the market is down, we want to be able to reach into safe, protected money sources. And when the market's up, that's when we reach into the market-based sources. And then we have a good portion of our money set aside for the future so that it can grow and outpace inflation. So it's really about designing an income plan that can get us through at least the next 5 to 10 years. And then we can layer on additional income in a structured manner as we've grown that money over time. So again, to summarize, I guess we have to recognize that no human being has a clear perspective on where the markets are heading. And so we have to adopt strategies that are going to work regardless of what happens in the world around us, because again, none of us can foresee those things. So if this all sounds confusing at all, come visit with us. We can show you an easier way to address this so you don't have to worry about the ups and downs of the market, so you can live your life with the confidence you need to focus on what life's really about, which hopefully is not money.
Personal finance expert Susie Orman just loves talking about successful retirement. I mean, don't we all? Well, on her Women in Money podcast, she said there's actually one thing that could erode that goal. Listen to this.
It's not just in retirement that you should cut this expense. I'm just going to really talk about one, but there's one expense that happens over and over and over again, and that expense is eating out. For you to have money, you have to learn to live below your means, but within your needs. You do that by simply purchasing needs versus wants.
Okay, so I hear that and I think two different things here, Mark. First of all, I go, well, no kidding. Obviously, common sense, right? Below our means, but within our needs. And then I also go, well, who is Susie Orman? She's a gazillionaire. She can do whatever she wants when she wants. Why is she telling me if I can go to Applebee's with my friends and if I can afford it, if that's okay, right? So there's a couple different ways of looking at this. But the bottom line is, once we take that step and we leave the workforce, right, that paycheck essentially stops. You enter retirement and you want to have a plan to know that you never have to live below your means, that you know that you can do what you want when you want. And Mark, that's where you come in. How do you create the successful retirement plan? Well,
I think she's on to something there. Anyone can retire, I always say, if they're willing to live on what they have. So the question is, what do they have? Have they prepared well? If people have not prepared well, then it could be a rice and beans kind of existence, and there's no thought of being able to go to Applebee's. If they've prepared well, then yes, they absolutely should be able to go to Applebee's periodically. Now, when I say periodically, all I mean by that is that it's easy to justify convenience. I can think of people that are close to me, some dear family friends that, their family eats out, 5 nights a week. And that just boggles my mind, because my family might eat out once a month. When the kids were young, that was, the best we can do. And certainly as they grew up, we kept that standard. Now, my wife and some of my kids may eat out more than that now. We're at a different comfort level than we were. But the point is, it's easy to justify things. And those very friends I'm talking about have never had money for any kind of retirement savings at all. They've basically lived paycheck to paycheck, and they just haven't thought about it. Well, now we're all in our late 50s. And the truth is, they're going to have to just keep working forever because there aren't any more inheritances coming. And the inheritances that did come weren't that particularly large. And so people just have to think differently. We have to live according to our means. So I think Susie's exactly right in that. I agree with you that it may sound a little jaded coming from someone who's worth many, many tens of millions. But the principle that she's teaching, I think, is sound in this respect.
Mm-hmm.
We need to modify our expectations sometimes. And certainly we see in the early years of retirement that people often get into this go-go kind of mentality. In the first 5, sometimes 10 years, they're spending like crazy. And they're just, it's like, the belt's been loosened up and they're breathing and they're going out and having fun. It's like a perpetual Saturday where they're going to movies and eating out and going to games and different things. And to some degree that can and should be expected. But at some point, it also has to be moderated. And how we moderate that, to what degree we moderate that, really is a very personal decision, with the understanding that we have to live with the consequences of our choices. And that's what I appreciate most, I think, about what she's saying. I disagree with her on many things, but in this, I agree that we really have to be conscious of our actions monetarily, because there's a ripple effect. We don't always know when we're going to be able to retire. Many people retire earlier than expected for reasons beyond their control. Many people live longer than they ever expected. And so there's all sorts of cartoons out there about, if I had known I was going to live this long, I never would have lived that well, kind of thing. So
Sure.
So these are difficult questions that I think require a lot of conversation, particularly as couples. So it's very common for me to have conversations with people and say, look, we're getting into a sacred zone here that really is just between you as a husband and wife. And that is, how comfortable do you want to be? How long can we continue? For example, I've got some clients who in the first 5 years of retirement, they're going on 5 and 6 cruises a year. They've blown through half of their retirement savings.
Jeez.
Now, it was a conscious choice for them, and they know that they're going to have to make adjustments in the future. So I'm not saying there's a right or wrong. What I'm saying is we just have to be conscious about this. And particularly for married couples, we need to be on the same page. And that's why we invite people to come in. Let's have a conversation and see what is a sustainable kind of spending rate. What's a sustainable withdrawal rate from your retirement accounts? There's all sorts of talk out there about 4% rules, 2.5% rules. Dave Ramsey says you can do 8%, which is crazy, but there's different standards out there that are talked about. And the real question is, what will your resources allow in your particular situation? And then let's choose to live within those means. So come visit with us. We have tools that can help you, and we can talk about it, give you maybe a sounding board kind of perspective. Create an income plan and a spending plan that will work for you.
Investment advisory services offered through Golden Years Financial LLC, a registered investment advisory firm. Insurance is offered through Golden Years Insurance Services. These firms do not provide legal or tax advice. Consult your own legal and tax advisors before taking actions that may have tax implications. Investing in securities involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Insurance contracts' principal protection is based on the claim-paying ability of the respective insurer. None of the information contained on this website shall constitute an offer to sell or solicit to buy a security or insurance product. The information and opinions contained on this site or requested from this site are provided by third parties believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. They are provided for informational purposes only and are not a solicitation to buy or sell any of the products mentioned. Any media logos and or trademarks contained herein are the property of their respective owners, and no endorsement by those owners of Mark Cordner, Golden Years Financial, or Golden Years Insurance is stated or implied.